SRB2 kart is dead, and a new game has arisen to take its place. Dr. Robotnik's Ring Racers. Released back in April of this year by the same developers as the original SRB2K, it is a considerably more feature-rich game, because on top of all the additional features it has added to the gameplay, the quantity of characters and tracks has been increased, a narrative has been thought out, and several new modes have been introduced. While this is all great from a player standpoint, it's doubly fantastic for me, because one of these new modes is Grand Prix. Do you know what that means? Easy episode boundaries for a playthrough. Well, that's right, as Ring Racers has this mode with actual competitors to race against compared to being relegated to karts. Patsy at best online mode, I can actually play the game in something resembling an episodic format. I don't like defining limits as to how long I should be playing in something to make an episode. I prefer my games doing that for me. All the trailers and buzz hypes up over 200 courses to play through, and seeing as 8 Grand Prix Cup contains 7 tracks, let me do the math quickly. Depending on whether each cup contains the same number of courses, and whether that 200 course figure includes battle levels, we're looking at somewhere between 28 and 40 episodes in this series, at a minimum. Ooh, now we're talking. We are in for the long haul, so strap in as we begin our racing legend. After we make our way through a tutorial, that is. Prior to beginning filming, I'd already done this and tested some courses on match race mode, but that was quite literally the day of release. Anyone who's touched Ring Racers will tell you that this is a far more complex game than kart ever was, and if we don't regain familiarity with how these karts move, we'll be hanging out with the Mazepins and Latifis of the Ring Racer world rather than the Verstappens and Hamiltons. So, ready for a half-hour-long intensive training course? If you said yes, well done, you're in a better position than me. For whatever reason, whether it be due to updates or add-ons, my controller bindings had been completely shot, and it took me 10 to 15 minutes to get everything in a position that kind of was playable. Ring Racers refused to recognise the trigger to my DualShock 4 for whatever reason, so I ended with items and drifting mapped to the bumpers, acceleration to cross, spin dash to square, brake to circle, and everything else mapped to whatever was left. I don't think Accent/Z is used much in races, which is a good thing, because it has ended up mapped to the same button as respawning. Therefore, as we make our way through the tutorial, expect to see a lot of this to get text boxes out of the way. Ring Racers' tutorial is a big part of the reason that upon initial release, it actually had a fairly mixed reception. If you haven't played it before, you are in for a treat. Kart's Crew claims that this is a maximalist game, and despite being a kart racer, has elements of resource management and fighting games? Okay, as a result, to make sure every player knows about all of this, every little feature, regardless of whether or not it's needed in the initial cups, is explained in this tutorial in significant detail. It's a trial by fire, as the tutorial segments increase in complexity from learning to turn your car and use rings to speed up, to outrunning a self-propelled bomb, effectively a blue cell, using drift boots and performing tricks early to get the weaker power-up necessary to drop early and land on a dash ring. To clarify, a lot of these techniques aren't actually utilised for a long while into the course list, and when the game first launched, the only way to escape all of this was to win a race against a roster of the highest level CPUs in the game. Please ignore this, and you had a full hour of gameplay explanations ahead of you. Subsequent updates have chilled the tutorial out a little bit, but those initial days were rough. But regardless, once my controller setup was complete, I made my way through the full thing all over again. I'm a glutton for punishment, but I figured the little bit of intrinsic knowledge I had from that initial hour with the game would put me in good stead to finish it, well, any time shorter than a full hour. You start off with a relaxed drive along the beats, learning the basic concepts of moving and the idea of the off-road and charger/dash panels, while Tails and Eggman have uncharacteristically civil conversation. As explained via text boxes in the manual, Ring Racers diverges from the main Sonic timeline after Sonic Adventure 2, as Eggman decides Gerald was a madman and gave up on his dreams of world domination to instead work on renewable energy with Tails. they create the high voltage ring, the result of condensing 80,000 rings into a single point. And the ring races are a method to safely test this unstable energy source. Very nice. We then move on to learning about rings, which speed up your kart, the insta-whip, an inherent attack each kart has, and ring depth, a state that leaves you vulnerable to attack. Then we have items, that's fairly self-explanatory, and tripwires, which block off shortcuts unless you breach a speed threshold. Considering this is all mapped to a single button, this is where the resource management elements come into play. You might avoid picking up an item to allow yourself to use rings for a speed boost, or intentionally leave yourself vulnerable in ring depth to perform an insta-whip. If that already sounds fairly complex for a kart racer, be worried, this doesn't even scratch the surface. Brakes are next on the agenda, and this is all self-explanatory. Brakes are brakes. Until you get to the e-brake, which you will occasionally use to avoid feeling the effects of gravity. Then we switch from slowing to a crawl to moving as fast as we can, because then we might as well add in a spin dash mechanic. The e-brake doesn't come into play for a long time, but the spin dash is basically a way to get your initial boost off of the starting line, though this is practically its only use case. Unsurprisingly, you will rarely decide to stop dead and choose to charge one of these in the middle of a race, after all. Then, because nothing in ring races is simple, your respawn mechanic needs an explanation. Instead of a Lakitu clone who will save you automatically, you have the ring suitor, which is a bit more versatile. If you get stuck or decide you're too far behind, you can charge up the ring suitor to get launched into a competitive position, although other racers actually get more of an effect from your ring suitor if they use it than you do. You see, ring races is actually an endorsement of capitalism, encouraging you to hoard wealth where possible in the form of rings, and promoting isolationism with a ring suitor. They thought they could hide their political agenda, but not from me. I see right through kart crew. That being said, the most valuable currency is time, and we're only about halfway through the tutorial and I've nearly written 2 pages worth of script. For the sake of brevity, I shan't discuss the drifting section. It's just a set of basic drift top off with outrunning a self-propelled bomb for a not insignificant amount of time. This is a fairly cruel section, seeing as it's basically asking you to outrun a blue cell for about 1.5 minutes. Then we have a lengthy segment on the pros and cons of the different springs, including a section where you need to fast forward to land on consecutive spring-covered platforms, before, finally, after 25 minutes, reaching the final lesson, tricks. Tricks in ring races work based on a timing system, where you need to press A at the right moment for the most powerful speed boost. And again, because nothing in this game is simple, there is directional input, voltage storage to buffer drifts upon landing, mechanics to change the timing parameters and power of the trick panel. It's a lot, and we use all of it in a final mission to power up a dam to generate power to finally finish the tutorial. Remember, as much as it took me 30 minutes to complete it, that's still not a particularly bad time considering just how long and oftentimes weirdly difficult the tutorial is, especially considering it is, you know, a tutorial. But whatever. Now we're finally gone back to square one, let's do some racing. The first cup is the Ring Cup, which I played, for the sake of easing myself in, on relaxed difficulty. This used to be called easy, with intense being normal and so on and so forth, but the names were changed because the game is so challenging and so many people were burning out refusing to drop down to easy that Kart Crew had to step in to stop people from giving up entirely. And hell, despite a few strong races initially, I would still say relax is at least equivalent to a normal mode in any other racing game. But don't worry, we'll get to that later. The first race is Robotnik Coaster Zone, probably Ring Races' signature track. Its theme was remixed for the trailer, it appears prominently in it, it's likely the first level you'll ever play, so thankfully it leaves a good impression. Oh, and by the by, remember we just finished that freakishly long tutorial? Well, despite everything, it somehow forgets to teach you about how a race starts. It works like Sonic Riders. The starting line will kill you if you touch it, so you need to time your spin dash correctly to be the first to cross it after the race begins to get the best boost from the spin dash and an additional first blood boost. I messed up the start, but an early jackpot in the ring lottery gave me the sustained speed needed to very quickly take a commanding first place. The CPU get more aggressive each time you win, but this means that they are completely useless in the first few races. Therefore, I had all of the time I needed to just take in the sights and sounds, because compared to SRB2 and SRB2K, Ring Races is actually quite a good looking game. It's very much retro, but it is perfectly executed, with a richness and variety to the colour far beyond that of its predecessors. Plus the massive number of sprites everything has, while apparently making the game a nightmare to mod, does mean everything is highly detailed. It looks like an actual, proper game that people would choose to go out and buy. But anyway, I won. By a landslide. The next level is Northern District, and this time I started out right and got my first blood boost to match my properly charged spin dash. And again, this CPU started off pretty dull, so I still handily won, although you can see from the minimap that the gap is already beginning to shrink. Additionally, the final lap of this race saw the introduction of these laser things, which will shrink you if you get hit. I don't get them. They don't seem to be an item, but they're also not necessarily a level gimmick, as they clearly don't match the theme of Northern District. I think they're just a variable that can appear in the final lap of any stage, but I don't think they're guaranteed to do so. Not that they actually made much difference, as my uncontested lead granted me a second A rank, because, again, just in case you thought this game was already complex enough, there's a scoring mechanic based off your time, rings, position at the end of each lap, and final ring count. But that means we're 2 races down, and therefore Ring Races has thrown in a curveball to mix things up. We're heading to Municipal Meadows for a bonus stage, because, say it with me now, just in case you thought this game was already complex enough, there are bonus stages. Effectively, you get put into a small enclosed area with a set of prison eggs, set a time limit, and you need to procure Gatsa bombs to destroy all of the prisons. There are also a bunch of blue spheres lying around, which will apparently speed up your racer, not that you'll notice or care. There are 7 eggs in this stage, all of which are exceedingly easy to get to. Another A rank. Don't think that just because you put me into a new scenario, I'm not going to try and 100% this stage. I'm a completionist, it's an inescapable need to see all of these counters tick up to maximum. Race 3 is where the AI races begin to get good. Panic City Zone is probably the hardest race in the whole cup, at least to me, what with its tight corners and thick off-road areas surrounding the whole course. Indeed, the name for this sort of off-road area thing eludes me. I think it rhymes with depravement or something. You get them Milan cities, and apparently you're not supposed to drive on them. Don't know why though. Each character in Ring Races fits into one of 9 engine classes, with Metal Sonic fit into Class I. This means he doesn't turn very well, which is a problem when I'm trying to drift around a corner with him to keep my rival at bay. What's that, you cry? Another mechanic? Because say it with me now, just in case you thought this game was complex enough, each cup will assign you a rival. This is the racer closest to winning the tournament, and compared to the other AI racers, is out for blood. In this cup, that racer was mighty, and although he was flagging in the first 2 laps competing against the Sonic AI, by the 3rd lap we were coming through corners neck to neck. Indeed, it doesn't bode well that I managed to continue my perfect lap bonus streak for another race. It just gives another opportunity for Mighty's AI to level up significantly to challenge me even further in the next race. That race was on Sonic Speedway, and while the AI opponents were only getting better, I really flubbed my opening stretch. Charging a spin dash for too long left me at a disadvantageous position, and burning all my rings to catch up left me in ring debt. While I've mentioned ring debt as a state in which you are much more vulnerable, seeing as I was in it fairly often in this race, I should probably explain what it actually means. Any touches from an opponent becomes an attack, irregardless of whether they hit you with an item, insta-whip you, or even just drive into you, you'll be spun out. This was another complaint I saw many had with ring races. Falling behind can be painful to come back from, as even minor mistakes are incredibly costly, causing you to lose all momentum or spin out for an age. That being said, I fought tooth and nail to get back into the main body of races, and though I ended up in ring debt several times afterwards, winning a jackpot in the ring lottery and speed sneakers right before the primary shortcuts of the whole track meant I came around that final corner in first place, even if it wasn't quite the perfect set of laps I'd enjoyed thus far. Only ended up with a B rank. My parents are going to be so disappointed. Bonus rounds appear twice in each cup, once after completing 2 races, and again after completing the penultimate race. This one took place on the Sonic CD special stage, which makes perfect sense when you consider the gameplay loop of those special stages is basically just this, only instead of jumping, we're using heavy munitions to take down the UFOs. Got off to a bumpy start, literally I was carried along the outer wall via repeatedly bouncing, but once I was stabilised, I cleaned up. One perfectly efficient loop of the map later, and all of the prison eggs, UFOs, were destroyed. On to the final race.
Aw, dang it!
Who could have seen this one coming? Green Hills in my Sonic game? Clearly, Kart Crew is completely creatively bankrupt. But whatever track we're on, we have a race and a cup to win. Or lose, in this instance. Due to my perfect streak of victories, the enemy AI is at the top of their game, and they were pushing hard from the word go to win. The rival especially was either in front of me or snapping at my heels the entire race, and while I will admit that due to my lack of familiarity with the course I was not driving at my best, even when taking shortcuts, I could expect to see him catch up within a matter of seconds. Ring debt was also a recurring problem, as I burned them all to stay ahead just to see someone else catch up regardless and knock me to the side. Not my proudest race, and coming at a measly 5th meant I ended up needing to redo the race to win the Ring Cup. Therefore, I took that initial attempt as a learning opportunity. You see, I think it's clear due to the constant force into ring depth that I was not using my rings correctly, simply using them as a means to get a quick speed boost to pull ahead of a competitor. That just left me vulnerable afterwards, then burning rings to bump into me, which would end up leaving me in a worse position anyways, and completely broke. Never a fun position to be in. So, I began using rings more strategically, whether that be to minimise the effects of being in the off-road, or to keep up speed whilst taking a wider corner to collect items or reach a dash panel. The first 2 laps went smoothly, but things began to fall apart momentarily in the latter half of lap 3. Firstly, I ran into a banana hidden in a patch of rings. A good strategy. Actually, you can barely differentiate the 2 sprites when they're bunched together like this. And then during this moment with all the springs, Mighty dropped a drop target which gave him, when mixed with 2 other races being giant in the narrow final corridor, a mighty advantage. That's not bad, come on. It was pure luck that I got a sneaker right at the last moment, which let me get back into 2nd. From there, even though I was hit during ring depth, I still had the raw speed required to hit a dash ring and fly into 1st place. Now that is how you enter a race and a cup in style. As we drive up to our podium and look at our commanding final results, let down only by Sonic Speedway and some minor footage corruption, blessed with an overall A rank and a couple of new features like online play and add-ons, I'd like to thank you all for watching. Ring Racers was always a game I was going to get to someday, but seeing as the Mania playthroughs and doing 2 hot, why not now? As I mentioned earlier, I think this is a game we'll be in the long haul for, so seeing as you'll probably be seeing a lot of this sort of video, I hope you enjoyed it, and ciao.